Why do some teams thrive under pressure while others fall apart? And why do some organizations retain great employees while others constantly struggle with turnover? You see, most people think culture is created by value statements, mission statements, or employee perks. And these are great because value statement and mission statements speak to what the organization is striving for and how they strive towards that mission. And employee perks are great because they do help employees feel valued and supported. But the truth is, culture is not what leaders say. Culture is what leaders repeatedly do. It's the behaviors they engage in that determines the culture. Because employees don't learn culture from posters. They learn culture from leadership behavior, from what is modeled in front of them. In every interaction, expectation and response and decision either strengthens or weakens culture. So if you're a leader listening to this, I encourage you to just take a curiosity stance and reflect, gain some awareness on how are your behaviors? What are you modeling for staff, right? And which direction is it taking the culture? This is where the cultural capacity equation becomes powerful because leadership behavior influences culture. Culture influences capacity and capacity influences performance, right? They all directly connect to the other. You can't isolate performance without looking at culture and without looking at leadership behavior. And so as we talk through today's video, I want you to think about your own leadership team and ask, what behaviors are being modeled? What gets rewarded? What gets tolerated and what gets ignored? And if you're serious about reducing burnout and improving retention, I encourage you to download the Workplace Burnout in the Bottom Line paper. It'll be linked below. This is a resource for leaders, and it's a strategy guide for organizations. It outlines the organizational costs of burnout and the leadership shifts that create sustainable performance. So in the previous two videos, we've talked a little bit about an experience I had working at a psychiatric hospital and turning things around. And if you're curious about that story and want the first two videos in this series, I encourage you to go back and watch those. But just kind of a recap, right? In this experience, there was high turnover, constant staffing shortages, constant operational stress, and leaders trying harder and harder just to keep things afloat. And when leaders were focused on hiring, scheduling, productivity, they were focused on we have to admit more patients, that took a toll on the facility. And in turn, what was really needed was leadership that was consistent, right? They were able to stay calm in the midst of chaos. They were consistent in what they were saying to staff and how they were guiding and supporting. Leaders who could communicate effectively with clarity and trust. Staff thrive in an environment where they trust leaders and they can believe and know that what is being said is accurate. They need that clear communication. You see, when leadership behavior changed, the culture in this organization, in this hospital, started to change. People started to become more of a team. They started to invest in the changes because they could see the hope and they believed what was being told to them. And a lot of this is because the culture has to change before your metrics change. You can't try and change the finances and the metrics if you're not looking at the culture. And that's because leadership behavior is one of the strongest predictors of organizational culture. You see, let's talk about for a minute, what does a healthy culture look like? Because healthy cultures have a sense of psychological safety. Employees feel safe coming to work. They feel supported. There's clear expectations and employees know what to expect. There's trust in that what is said will be followed through with. And there's accountability, and that's not just accountability for leaders, but accountability for employees and accountability for leaders. Everyone has to be held accountable. And there's consistent communication. If there's not consistent communication and clear communication, things can fall apart. In a healthy culture, employees feel valued. They feel like they make a difference and they matter for that organization. They feel supported in everything they do. They know that if they need something, they can reach out to their supervisor. And employees feel heard. This is one of the big ones, and I hear it all the time. Employees do not enjoy working for companies where they don't feel like they have a voice. And it doesn't mean that their suggestions have to be what's implemented. It just means they need to feel heard so they feel part of the team. And that provides a sense of safety so that they do feel like they can contribute, that it's a safe place to contribute. And I've experienced that periodically and actually consistently where I would be asked for my opinion, but it would immediately be shot down. And where's the safety in that? Right? I quit sharing because I wasn't really even listened to. And I see that all the time with people I work with. And what's important is that healthy culture is not the absence of stress, because stress comes with life. There's stress in different situations, but it's the leadership's ability to provide a sense of stability during the stress, right? That's what's important. There has to be a presence of stability for everybody to be able to manage whatever stress comes. And there are some leadership behaviors that strengthen culture, and we're going to talk about 4 of them specifically. The first one is clarity. As a leader, are you or is your leadership providing clear expectations? There's no question of what is expected. Are you making it clear what the priorities are and what is not as important? Sometimes as leaders, we make everything a priority and not everything can be a priority at the same time. As a leader, are you clearly communicating these expectations and priorities? That is important. The second behavior is consistency. As a leader, do you have predictable responses? Meaning people can expect you to respond in a similar way versus being reactionary. Do you follow through? So do you say what you say? Do you do what you say you're going to do? And are you reliable? People can count on you if they ask for help. The third behavior is recognition. Sometimes I think as a leader, it's so easy to get bogged down into the day-to-day stuff that we don't always take a moment to recognize employees, but are you taking that time to acknowledge their efforts, celebrate their wins, or reinforce desired behaviors? This doesn't take but a moment, but oftentimes it's one of the first things that disappears when things become chaotic. And the fourth behavior is presence. Are you accessible? Now, in other videos, I've talked about having an open door policy and whether that is beneficial or whether that drains you as a leader. And you don't have to have an open door policy to be accessible, but people need to know that they can reach out in whatever manner you have set and that you will be available per what you said you would be, right? When you're present with them, do you truly listen to what they're saying and take it in? And are you able to remain calm during challenges? I've seen many leaders who become just as stressed and reactionary during a challenge. And it's important for leaders to be able to stay calm because you are modeling and you are the leader in those situations, right? And these behaviors are what helps increase organizational capacity, right? So when we have a healthy culture, we can start to increase capacity of what people can do. We also need to recognize that there are some leadership behaviors that will quietly damage the culture. Some of these behaviors that will damage the culture might include, are you responding to everything as if it's an emergency or a crisis? Because not everything is urgent or emergent. Are you constantly pivoting to where it shows that the priorities are inconsistent and that you're not clear on that? As a leader, you want to be careful that you're not being emotionally reactive and that you're not operating from stress. Yes, stress happens, but you can still manage your reactions and your emotions. Are you having a lack of transparency where employees have to fill in the gaps with assumptions? And I've seen this a lot. Higher leadership thinks they should not be transparent with employees, especially when changes are coming. And I can tell you from experience, that is probably the worst advice I've seen. People don't need to know the exact path. But I can almost guarantee you, especially I've seen this in the behavioral health field, right? We know laws are changing. They pay attention. And yes, leadership, we try to get ahead of it, but I'm not doing my employees any due service if I'm leaving them in the dark, right? They just want to know that leadership is aware of it and that they're working on some plans. And you might be surprised, sometimes employees will have good ideas. So just be careful that if you're not being fully transparent, what that might do to the culture. And oftentimes leaders might unintentionally be teaching that exhaustion equals commitment. So they're modeling burnout. And what I mean by this is I've seen leaders who don't set their own work hours. They work way too much. Now, I recognize in leadership, there's an expectation that you work closer to 50 hours a week instead of 40, and that's okay. But are you modeling using PTO and taking time off? Or are you modeling not using time and just burning the candle at both ends? Because people pay attention. And so it's important to be aware that leaders often create burnout cultures, but they do it unintentionally. Nobody wants to create that kind of environment, but we do it just through our behaviors and how we respond to situations. And this is why I created the sustainable workforce method. This is a framework that I walk organizations through, and this is similar to what I did with the psychiatric hospital when I was there, right? First, you have to assess. You have to know where the cultural strains exist and what's going on in the system that might be creating a burnout culture versus a thriving culture. The second aspect is we look at aligning systems and expectations and how leaders engage their teams and leaders go about the day, along with the organizational systems and structures. The third aspect is looking at team cohesion, and that's how do teams communicate together? How is conflict resolved and is trust being built? So we want those teams to come back together. We want to make sure that they are working well together, communicating, and they feel like they're part of the team. And the last aspect is the workforce resiliency. And really, this aspect is the one piece that is about the individual employee and what they do for themselves. It's about equipping employees with sustainable performance skills, because that is a small aspect, but it is not the only aspect. Because healthy culture is built intentionally, and as leaders, we have to stay intentional no matter what changes come at us. And it is a leadership responsibility. It's not just an HR that owns culture. It is every leader in the organization owns the culture. They're the ones that determine what the daily culture looks like, right? They're what employees watch. Employees watch how leaders respond under pressure, how leaders handle conflict, how mistakes are managed, and how success is celebrated. And the important thing to remember is culture follows leader behavior. So if you want a deeper understanding of how burnout impacts culture, retention, and performance and profitability, download the Workplace Burnout and Bottom Line paper. It's linked below. In this paper, you're going to learn the hidden costs of burnout. You're going to gain insight to the leadership blind spots, some workforce strategies that you can implement today, and what it looks like with organizational solutions to turn things around. Because the same information is what I use when I consult with organizations and leadership teams. And if this resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe, because the next video, we're going to talk about what high retention organizations do differently. This is where we're going to explore why some organizations keep great employees, the leadership practices that improve retention, and how culture influences workforce stability. Because employees don't experience your mission statement, they experience your leadership. Culture is built through thousands of daily interactions, expectations, and decisions. So if you want healthier teams, stronger retention, and sustainable performance, start by examining the behaviors leaders model every day. And if you'd like to dive deeper into the organizational side of burnout, download the Workplace Burnout and Bottom Line paper today.